Imagine a scrawny kid from the deadliest streets of Brooklyn, dodging bullets, stealing to survive, and getting arrested dozens of times before he even became a teenager, who somehow rises to become the most feared and electrifying boxer the world has ever seen, the youngest heavyweight champion in history at just 20 years old. A man who could end fights with a single punch and turned boxing into a global spectacle. This is the untold story of Mike Tyson, Iron Mike, the baddest man on the planet, a journey of raw talent, unbreakable will, devastating tragedy, and ultimate redemption that proves no matter how deep the darkness, a fighter can rise. Born Michael Gerard Tyson on 30th June 1966, in Cumberland Hospital in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, New York, Mike entered a world already stacked against him. His father, Jimmy Kirkpatrick, abandoned the family when Mike was just 2 years old, leaving his mother Lorna Tyson to raise Mike and his two older siblings, Rodney and Denise, on welfare in one of the roughest neighborhoods imaginable. They soon moved to Brownsville, Brooklyn, an area plagued by poverty, gangs, drugs, and violence where survival was a daily battle. Little Mike was small for his age, spoke with a lisp and a high-pitched voice that made him a target for bullies, and faced constant humiliation on those mean streets. By the time he was 7 or 8, Mike was already running with street gangs, learning to fight back against those who picked on him, and turning to petty crime just to eat. He stole food, clothes, and money, mugging people and snatching purses because his family had so little. His mother worked hard but struggled, and the absence of a father figure left a massive hole in his life filled with anger and fear. Mike later recalled how he felt born into mud and humiliation, constantly fighting just to exist. One pivotal moment came when an older kid killed one of Mike's beloved pigeons that he raised on the rooftop. In a fit of rage, the young boy exploded and attacked the bully, showing the ferocious spirit that would later define him in the ring. By age 13, Mike had been arrested an astonishing 38 times, mostly for theft and fighting, landing him in juvenile detention centers and reform schools. It seemed like he was headed straight for a life behind bars or an early grave in the streets that claimed so many young black boys in 1970s Brooklyn. But fate had other plans when Mike was sent to the Tryon School for Boys in upstate New York, a facility for troubled youth. There, a counselor and former boxer named Bobby Stewart noticed the kid's incredible natural strength and aggression during a fight in the recreation yard. Stewart saw potential in Mike's powerful build and fearless attitude despite his small size. He started teaching him the basics of boxing, and Mike took to it like a duck to water, channeling all his street-honed rage into disciplined punches. Impressed by Mike's rapid progress and raw power, Stewart introduced him to the legendary trainer Cus D'Amato, a wise old boxing guru who had trained champions like Floyd Patterson and Joe Storrs. Cus ran a gym in Catskill, New York, and lived by a philosophy of turning boys into men through boxing, discipline, and mental toughness. When Cus first saw 12-year-old Mike spar, he knew instantly this kid was special, a once-in-a-lifetime talent with the heart of a lion. Cus became Mike's legal guardian, took him out of the reform system, and brought him to live in his Catskill home, providing the stability, tough love, and training Mike had never known. Under Cus's guidance, Mike's life transformed completely. He woke up early for road work, trained relentlessly in the gym, studied fight films of greats like Jack Dempsey and Joe Louis, and absorbed Cus's famous peekaboo style, which emphasized head movement, bobbing and weaving, and exploding with hooks and uppercuts from a crouched position. Cus instilled in Mike a killer instinct and unbreakable confidence, telling him he would become the youngest heavyweight champion ever. Mike dropped out of school but earned his GED later, focusing entirely on boxing. As an amateur, he compiled a strong record, winning Junior Olympics gold and turning heads with his knockout power. In 1985, at age 18, Mike turned professional under the management of Bill Caton and the guidance of Cus and trainer Kevin Rooney. His pro debut on 6 March 1985 against Hector Mercedes ended in a first-round knockout, setting the tone for what was to come. Mike won his first 19 fights by knockout, 12 of them in the very first round, showcasing explosive speed, power, and ferocity that no one had seen in a heavyweight before. At just 5 feet 10 inches tall and around 220 pounds, he was shorter than most heavyweights but compensated with lightning-quick hands, devastating body punches, and an intimidating presence that made opponents freeze. The boxing world took notice as Mike tore through the ranks like a hurricane. Fights lasted mere seconds as he dismantled journeymen and contenders with ease. Cus's death in November 1985 was a devastating blow, hitting Mike hard since Cus had been like the father he never had, but Mike pushed forward in honor of his mentor. By 1986, he was fighting top competition. On 22 November 1986, in Las Vegas, 20-year-old Mike faced WBC heavyweight champion Trevor Berbick in a title fight. Berbick was a tough veteran who had beaten legends, but Mike dominated from the opening bell, knocking him down twice before finishing with a brutal second-round knockout. At 20 years and 4 months old, Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight champion in boxing history, a record that still stands today. The crowd erupted, and the world was stunned by this kid from the streets who had just conquered the division. Mike unified the titles soon after, defeating James Smith for the WBA belt in March 1987 and Tony Tucker for the IBF belt in August 1987, becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion and the first in the three-belt era. His fights sold out arenas, drew massive pay-per-view numbers, and made him a global superstar almost overnight. Mike's style was poetry in violence, the peekaboo defense combined with hooks that could shatter jaws and uppercuts that ended careers. He knocked out legends like Pinklon Thomas, Tony Tucker, and others with precision. Fans loved his no-nonsense approach and the fear he instilled. Opponents admitted feeling intimidated before the bell even rang. Off the ring, Mike's life was a whirlwind. He bought mansions, fancy cars, and lived large, but the loss of Cus left a void. In 1988, he married actress Robin Givens in a high-profile union that quickly turned stormy with public accusations and a bitter divorce. Despite personal turmoil, Mike kept winning, defending his titles against formidable challengers like Larry Holmes and Michael Spinks, both of whom he stopped quickly. Spinks, a former champion, lasted just 91 seconds in 1988, one of the most dominant performances in heavyweight history. Mike seemed invincible, a force of nature who had risen from poverty and crime to the pinnacle of sports. His story inspired millions, showing that with discipline and belief, anyone could overcome the streets. But as the lights grew brighter and the money poured in, cracks began to form that would test his character like never before, setting the stage for an even more dramatic fall and eventual comeback in the years ahead. As Mike Tyson stood at the absolute peak of boxing in the late 1980s, holding all the major heavyweight belts and earning tens of millions of dollars, the world saw an unstoppable champion who had transcended the sport to become a cultural icon. Yet behind the fame and fortune, personal demons from his troubled past were beginning to surface in ways that would lead to one of the most dramatic falls from grace in sports history. After unifying the titles, Mike continued his reign with impressive defenses, but the absence of Cus D'Amato's guiding hand became more apparent as management issues, legal troubles, and lifestyle excesses started to weigh him down. His marriage to Robin Givens ended in a messy public divorce in 1989, filled with allegations of domestic issues that painted a complicated picture of Mike's emotional struggles. He even attempted suicide once during this period, highlighting the deep pain he carried from childhood abandonment and street life. Still, in the ring, he remained dominant until 11 February 1990, when he faced underdog James "Buster" Douglas in Tokyo, Japan. Douglas was a heavy underdog, motivated by his mother's recent death, and in one of the biggest upsets in boxing history, he knocked Mike out in the 10th round after absorbing tremendous pressure early on. Mike, who had trained poorly and underestimated his opponent, lost the undisputed title that night, shocking the world and marking the beginning of his decline. The loss to Douglas devastated Mike, but he bounced back with several wins, including knockouts over Henry Tillman, Alex Stewart, and Donovan Ruddock in tough fights that showed his resilience. However, in July 1991, a trip to Indianapolis for the Miss Black America pageant led to his arrest on charges of raping Desiree Washington, a contestant. The trial in 1992 was highly publicized, with Washington testifying that Mike had assaulted her in his hotel room after she refused advances. Mike maintained his innocence, claiming it was consensual, but the jury convicted him of rape and deviant sexual conduct. On 26 March 1992, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, serving 3 years before parole. This incarceration at age 25 robbed him of his prime years, during which he could have solidified his legacy even further. While in prison, Mike converted to Islam, found some solace in reading and reflection, and emerged in 1995 determined to reclaim his throne. His return to boxing in 1995 and 1996 saw him win the WBC and WBA titles again by defeating Peter McNeely and Buster Matthews Jr. Then Frank Bruno and Bruce Seldon, showing flashes of his old power despite ring rust. But the comeback took a dark turn on 28 June 1997, in the infamous bite fight against Evander Holyfield. Holyfield had beaten Mike earlier in 1996 in an 11th round TKO, exposing vulnerabilities in Mike's defense and stamina. In the rematch, after Holyfield had butted him multiple times without penalty in Mike's view, frustration boiled over. In the 3rd round, Mike bit off a piece of Holyfield's ear, leading to disqualification, a massive fine, and a temporary suspension. The incident horrified fans and damaged his reputation further, though Mike later apologized. More fights followed with mixed results, including a loss to Lennox Lewis in 2002 where Lewis outboxed him convincingly. Mike's later career was plagued by financial problems despite earning over $400 million in his prime. Bad investments, legal fees, alimony, and a lavish lifestyle left him bankrupt by 2003. He retired in 2005 after a loss to Kevin McBride, admitting he no longer had the drive or physical condition to continue at the highest level. Post-retirement, Mike faced more troubles, including a 2008 bankruptcy filing, but he began rebuilding his life through acting roles in films like The Hangover, where his comedic timing won new fans, and launching a one-man show called Mike Tyson, Undisputed Truth, that candidly shared his life story. Mike's personal life also evolved for the better. He married Kiki Spicer in 2009, and they had children together, providing the family stability he craved. Tragically, in 2009, his 4-year-old daughter Exodus died in a tragic accident on a treadmill, a loss that deepened his faith and commitment to being a better father. Mike became an advocate for cannabis through his Tyson Ranch business, openly discussing mental health, addiction struggles from his past cocaine use, and the importance of redemption. He reconciled with many former rivals, including Holyfield, and became a beloved figure on podcasts and social media, known for his wisdom, humor, and honesty about mistakes. In 2020, at age 54, he returned for an exhibition against Roy Jones Jr., showing he still had skills and passion for the sport. His 2024 exhibition against Jake Paul further proved his enduring draw. Today, Mike Tyson is a symbol of transformation, from a street kid with 38 arrests to a champion, prisoner, and now entrepreneur and family man who uses his platform to inspire others facing adversity. His record stands at 50 wins, 6 losses, with 44 knockouts, but his real legacy is the journey of a poor boy who became boxing's greatest champion through sheer willpower, only to learn the hardest fights happen outside the ring. Mike's story teaches us that failure doesn't define you, but how you rise after falling does, turning a life of pain into one of purpose and leaving an indelible mark on sports and culture forever.